It's crazy how glamorized war is, but in reality, as many people know, it's absolute hell. And in this video, I talked to somebody who volunteered in Ukraine and was on the front lines at one point. Try to enjoy the video the best you can. Dude, you look fucking dead inside. You good, man?
Did Frontline Recovery in Ukraine for like 4 months, so a little bit.
Frontline Recovery in Ukraine. Damn, did you all get like fucking... Tell me the story, man, like, respectfully. What happened? Like...
So basically, I went when it first started, and it's kind of a really rough process. You just go to Poland, go across the border, and then you get a shuttle to Kyiv. And we would go and retrieve dead bodies from villages and battlefields after they would clear out the combat. So we get shelled and like rocket strike, but I never really got shot at. I got shot at like twice.
I mean, how did that like affect you? Well, how did you even like, is this something like you fucking signed up for, or like how did you get into it?
You just go. You literally show up and say, I am of service. I've never been in the military, but I'll do whatever I can to help. And they're just like, you know, you're gonna, like, you're pretty much like, we can't say that you're not gonna die. Like, there's a pretty good chance that you're gonna get iced or hurt. And I said, okay, I'll do it. I'm not in school. I didn't have a girlfriend at the time. So I just didn't really have anything holding me back. My parents were okay with it. Well, they weren't, but they...
Damn, you fucking crashed. That was a crazy... oh, wait. Okay, you crashed for a little bit. What were you saying?
Basically, like, you know, parents hated that I was going, but they accepted that I went. And the first 4 days, I think I carried probably 30 or 40 bodies back. And sometimes we ran out of body bags, so we would have to sling them over our shoulders or pick them up in pieces and walk them back to a place where we could process and bury them.
How did that like affect you? And well, actually, I have a question before we get into that, man. Like, how were they like identified? Because I'm assuming they were like fucking blown the straps, like their heads were like blown off and shit, you know?
Tattoos. Scars. People sometimes just know, especially wives to husbands. They just know.
Yeah.
They can just look and see. Like, I remember one time all we could recover was a leg, and husband recognized a pattern of freckles on her leg, and we identified the body that way. And the hardest part was like telling family members that their like loved one was dead, and especially only one of us could speak Ukrainian, so a lot of it was just like us saying like we're sorry, like we don't know what to say, like get this guy over here, he could speak Ukrainian fluently, he would translate, he'd sign off on papers, and then they'd either take it home themselves and deal with it themselves, or we would do a grave process, and that goes over to the military and to the government, and then we kind of just go off and go collect more.
Damn. So like, how did that affect you mentally and shit, man? And well, first, when did you come back?
So I stayed 4 months. I went February 24th, and I kind of lingered around in June, but I left around June. So it was really just kind of a blur for a lot of it, for the mental, but there's snapshots and vivid memories that I forget when they come back. But mentally, it fucked me, definitely.
Yeah.
You don't pick up a dead kid in pieces and have to give it to a mom and dad and not come out like right in the head. There's just a lot of like, because the shitty thing is I live in a city and it's no different to a city over there. So like I'd be walking around and I'm still like freaked out from planes. I hate planes now. Like any plane noise, I shit my pants a little bit still, because they would come and drop dummy bombs, which are basically just unguided bombs from a plane. They'd smack into apartment buildings. And then we would have to come up and process and do all that shit. We would go with the fire department and we'd go with the police. And if military was posted, they'd come and help too.
It's fuck, man. Yeah. I don't. I'm like, I've never like. How do I even like say this, man? I didn't know that was like happening. I knew like war was going on and shit, man. But like I never got like the full like details that like people like actually like dying. Like, damn.
Yeah, we went to a town called in the early war. It was called Bucha and Irpin, and it was they were two massacred cities. It was the two first massacred cities that we actually had to go through, and their photos. But we came in a little bit later to kind of help just like clean and like get the roads back open so people can start moving through and coming back to what was left of their houses. And you go through homes and everything's just gone. Like the Russians just take everything. They take they'd steal toilets, they'd steal washing machines, they'd steal fucking tables, chairs, fucking clocks, anything that was made of a kind of a metal that they can melt down. Because they're scavengers, they just go through and pick shit clean. And you'd go through the street and there'd be brown stains all over the floor, and then they'd show us photos, and there's fucking people just with their hands behind their backs with fucking their heads blown open. And you'd go by and you'd be like clearing rubble because they literally give you a broom because that's how frantic everything was. There wasn't enough shit going around for anyone to get, so you just got shit from houses. Like you go to a house and like find a broom, and then there's your shit. Go clear gravel off the street, and you'd be sweeping, and you'd find like little chunks of people on the floor, and you just sweep it aside or sweep into a gutter, and it just goes away after a little bit.
I don't know what to say. You know? I appreciate like you going to help, but damn, man, shit. Weird question, man, but I kind of want to ask this. Do you ever think you will like see yourself ever going back?
No. I mean, I don't like it's kind of still fresh, but like I've almost died a couple times, pretty fucking close, like way too close for comfort.
You want to share some of the stories?
I'll share one. It wasn't too bad. It was the first time, so we were all kind of like giggling about it. We were like, we just lived through that. How the fuck? Like, it was one of those moments. Like, we just didn't know how the fuck we lived through it. So we go through vans, and we go take like a column of like 3-4 vans, go up dirt roads that tractors use, and we go through towns, and we get people out, get their bodies, get the people and van back out, and they'd shell us while we were driving. So you'd be in a van, like we have shit, like everything all prepped. Everything is where it should be for people to come in for as many people to fit. We can fit 10 people in the back of this motherfucker with hand possessions, and that's it. So that's 30 people we can get out. That's the sick and the elderly and the children and the women. That's what we want to get first. And on our way back, there's this thing called a BM-21 Grad. It has 30 little missiles on a truck, and it's an artillery piece, and it shoots straight up, and it's like 30 of these motherfuckers. They have drones that they'll fly around towns that they semi-occupy or are trying to attack, and they'll see columns like us and then direct artillery fire onto it because they think that we're military or that we're unmarked vans, so there's no like crosses because they shoot at crossed vans. So we were just like, fuck it, like we're gonna get shot at anyway, let's just go. And we thought we'd get shot at, but it was just fucking artillery. Like that shit lands. Have you ever been punched really hard, like in the chest, or had like a baseball hit you in like the gut or like the chest really hard? Yeah. Imagine that, but it's your whole body for about a split second. And if you don't have your mouth, I mean, I have a fucking fake tooth now right here because when we were under bombardment once, I had my mouth closed and a shell blew up. It spit fragment into the fucking van, and I crunched my teeth, and one of my teeth fucking fell out.
your entire body was like paralyzed for a second almost, right?
Yeah, I mean, the first time it happens, like it's a shockwave. Like the van shakes, everything shakes. Like your innards shake, your brain shakes, like your ears go like that. I have I have TBI and hearing damage. It's called traumatic brain injury because of how many concussions I sustained in a short amount of time. Because it blow up and it give you concussion. If you ever had a concussion, then imagine running around trying to get dead people and a bunch of terrified old people, women and children, the people who are most prone to freaking out. You have a concussion, a bunch of shrapnel is ripped through a fucking van. Some old dude just took fucking frag in the ass. Now everyone's freaking out. You have a concussion. Everyone else has a concussion. And now a guy who's driving the van also probably has a mild one. So now he has to drive a van through a dirt road at 30 miles per hour so we don't get blown up. And it's just kind of things that y'all have to process all at once and make split-second decisions to get shit going.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing, man. Did you ever see like a Russian soldier or anything like that?
Dead ones all the time. You'd see them rotting. All the stank. Stinks. Like you'd be going through and you'd be seeing, because they trenched up in tree lines that were in these open fields, and the Russians don't pick up their dead; they leave them. Like the Ukrainians, if they can, they try to retrieve their dead. Like people will die trying to retrieve dead, but the Russians, if someone dies, they just leave them. If someone gets wounded, they just leave them. So I've heard stories from guys that were American volunteers of guys that they would shoot leaving trenches, and then they'd be sitting in the field because no one came for them. They'd be screaming for like 2.5 days before they just bled out or starved because they didn't want to move. So like shit like that, and you just walk through these fucking trenches and they're just littered, like 10 or 15 of them, just bloated and black. Eyes fucking popped out of their head and shit. Teeth are like rusty looking. Like it looks like you can like scrape it right out of their fucking mouth. And we didn't touch them. You just let them. You put dirt over them.
Yeah. And these were all because of like one person, really.
Yep. All because one guy wanted more land.
That's tough.
Yep.
Really fucking hard. I appreciate you sharing, man. Enjoy the rest of your night.
You too, man.